Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to episode 282 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host today, Pete Visco. Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we are missing Howard. Paul and I will talk about it in a few minutes, but Paul and I alone are going to be discussing Arlington Million Day at Colonial Downs. That doesn't exactly jive, but we'll get through it anyway. And then when Paul and I are done with Colonial Downs, stick with us. Jim Miller, as usual, on our Thursday show. He'll be joining us to talk about the late pick 4 at Hawthorne on Sunday. So before we get started, let's go through some of the boring administrative stuff. If you see on the bottom of the screen there, definitely under the video player, or I should say to the right of the video player, hit that subscribe button, let YouTube know that you're interested in our show, and also hit that like button, hit the notification bell so you know when all our shows are coming up. For any of you audio listeners, please also listen, subscribe, rate, review on wherever you listen to your audio, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor. I like Overcast personally. I think it's a really good app. So however you do, please listen, subscribe, and rate. Follow us on Twitter. The show's Twitter is the same as Howard's Twitter, at H Kravitz. And then when Paul and I are on the screen, you'll also see our Twitter handles. So please, if you're watching, if you like the show, give us all a follow. Check out our website, hhhracingpodcast.com. We all went to Saratoga, as you may have seen on last night's show this past weekend. So on the photos page, there's a bunch of pictures from our trip. There's also sample podcasts, power picks, links to YouTube. There's stuff now about the horses that some of the members of the HHH Racing Podcast have ownership in. There's articles by the fantastic Paul Halloran from the Saratoga Special. There's tournament results. There's so many things. If you want to know about us, the betting and boozing guys, anybody, check out our website. Excuse me. Our power picks, our regular power picks, as we always say, $15.99 a month, basically $4 a week. We're go through Patreon if you want to subscribe. Again, the link is at the bottom of the video player and also on our website. Check it out. It's been pretty profitable, so I think you'll enjoy that for sure. And then our Saratoga Power Picks, if you want to subscribe, again, right now we're only offering weekend Power Picks. So it's for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You get full card, you get top 3, you get ABC grids, you get price and spot plays, you get other bets. If you want to subscribe, you have until midnight tonight for this upcoming weekend. If you miss that, then it opens back up on Monday for next weekend. So again, midnight tonight, Eastern, I should say, then it will close for the weekend. So if you really want to jump on those, try and do it within the next few hours. So that's all the administrative stuff. So let's just bring Paul on so we can sort of get this day going. So my co-host tonight from the Saratoga Special, Massachusetts, wherever else you want to find him, the great Paul Halloran. What's happening, Paul?
Well, hello, Pete. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Pete, I'm about 2/3 of the way caught up from being back to Saratoga. And I mean just not walking around like a zombie anymore.
You know, it's funny. I still have been staying up too late, so I haven't caught up on sleep, which is an awful idea. So I'm basically tired constantly. And my family and I are flying to California for the week on Saturday. So we'll be all screwed up with the time zones and everything at that point. So needless to say, it is. I don't feel like I'll be untired for a little while. So.
Yeah, well, I'm trying, but as I say, I'm not there yet.
You're not there yet. You know,
and after the show, I have to finish tomorrow's Saratoga Power Pick, so I'm not getting there tonight.
So you're basically you're working your night job, you're working your day job.
I've actually worked my day job every day this week. What an outrage!
What are they doing to us? Well, I guess you need the money if you want to keep betting the horses. So we gotta do something there. While we made a joke last night on the show that is it conspicuous that Howard and Kyle, who's not usually on our Thursday show, skipped today because we are covering Arlington Million, Beverly D,
Yes.
the Secretariat this year at Colonial Downs, which makes perfect sense, obviously. So we've been messing with Howard saying, did you skip this one just because you're still pissed at CDI? But he did send us a picture, and it looks like he is, quote unquote, at a school event tonight. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, I would have no problem in calling it the Million.
The Million. It's funny because I always loved Arlington Million, and not with any connection to Arlington Racetrack, but I just loved the turf day, and it was always such one of my favorite days.
Yeah. It was really a great day, Pete.
So I'm going to still enjoy it regardless of in what location they wind up having it. Let's take a quick peek and see who's joining us. First commenter of the night. We should start giving out a little prize. First commenter of the night, Katie with a hey. Hello, Katie. We got Michael Lawson. Hello, who's always in there with us. Time for a great show, we hope. Howard Who, that's from the HHH Racing podcast on the Facebook feed. Oh, Paul Halloran with the Howard Who joke. They may never race on turf at Saratoga. Poor Rain, right? Well, don't say that because poor Paul is doing the picks for tomorrow, and it looks like another potential washout day. So half the picks go to crap, which is a pain in the neck. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know, Pete. It's the forecast. Sylvain's there. He's in the chat. Said they had a storm. The forecast was it wasn't really supposed to rain beyond 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. It did not rain all day up there. I watched the races today. I don't think they got any during the day. I got to think they're going to do everything they can, at least to run the stakes tomorrow. I mean, they've already held up the Hall of Fame stakes by a week. And, you got Euros over here. God. So we'll see. I am handicapping as if they're going to be on the turf.
I like it. We hope it is because again, that was a good race. We were excited for it last time. It got basically canceled with, so many minutes to post. So a few more made in focus more than looks. Cross entered in the Colonial race, I guess. Just assumed he was going at Saratoga tomorrow. I wasn't sure.
You know what? I handicapped. I don't know what you did, Pete. I left that horse off my Colonial picks.
Oh, you did? I did.
I'm assuming the same thing. I mean, if the horse is at Saratoga,
probably gonna run there then.
Yeah, that horse is in the more than looks was in the which race? The Secretariat. So the Secretariat at Colonial is worth $500,000. It is a mile on turf for 3-year-olds, grade 2, and the Hall of Fame at Saratoga is worth $500,000, mile on turf for 3-year-olds. So I would think, if you're Cherie DeVoe and the horse was already at Saratoga, you stay there, but we'll find out.
Well, we have from Sylvain, he's in Saratoga, rainstorm a few hours ago. So we'll see what happens. Again, we have a lot of people in the chat. We really appreciate that. So why don't we jump in? Yeah, I did the opposite, so we'll see where that pick lands up. I had suffered a bad DQ on Powers Court at 5-1.
Oh my God, I had that horse made
you
in
did
focus. Too? Oh my God, I forgot about that race. Oh, why did he remind me of that race?
Thanks, Made in Focus, for
I think I had a horse second who was a decent price too.
We all remember those, don't we?
Oh boy!
All right. Well,
all right, we got to move on.
Yeah, let's jump into Colonial, and don't forget, everyone. After Paul and I are done, Jim Miller will be joining me, and him will talk through the late pick 4 at Hawthorne, and we will let Paul go to do the power picks and finish those up. But let's jump into Colonial right now. Let me bring this up. So as you can see, the pick 5, the late pick 5, which we are covering, is races 7 through 11. It's an awesome sequence, though. Hopefully, this one should be good. I think the weather here is going to be fantastic. So race 7, handicap 7 furlongs. We got 6 right now. It's a tough one because the 2 favorites are pretty chalky, so I'm not sure if it's the greatest betting race. We have Frosted Departure at 6-5, Bouncer at 8-5. Let me bring up our banners here. You and I weren't too far off here. Let's bring up the PPs. You could talk through. You went with the 6 Frosted Departure on top. I mean, to me, this was a little bit of a toss-up race. What'd you like better about Frosted Departure?
Yeah, you'll note, Pete, when we get to the pick 5 play at the end of the sequence, I get wider. I get
Me too.
wider as we
Me
go,
too.
and
Yeah, well, I did the
you
same
know,
exact thing.
and actually, this, you could make an argument that this race you could maybe pick one of them. I think I would be very surprised if the 1 or the 6 did not win this race.
Me too. I'm with you.
Why did I go with the 6 to answer your question? I number one reason is the company he's been keeping. Rivet looks like is running really well. General Jim is entered on turf in one of the stakes at Saratoga. I think he's in the Hall of Fame, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that was I didn't know what to do with General Jim in that race. That was a weird choice, but at least he had been on the turf before. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
He ran well in that race, and Fort Bragg came back to win. You just look at the company lines. Rivet and Prince Jericho both came back to win 2 races back. So
it was on the Derby Trail, the Southwest.
Yeah.
Actually ran a decent third to your horse Red Route 1. We hadn't
Oh,
talked.
I blew that one.
Did you watch that race?
Pete,
You didn't have it.
That. You know what? I put it. What night? It was Sunday, right?
I think it was Sunday night. Yeah.
And I literally got home from Saratoga at 8:00. And, unpacked the car, started unpacking, did this and that. When I finally sat down, the race had just gone.
Oh, that's the worst. That
I definitely would have played that horse.
He was rolling, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, again, it is a little bit of a flip of the coin. I just, again, based on the company that the 6 has been keeping, I gave the 6 a slight edge.
Yeah, and actually, the couple of things that I had pointed out, and people who care can see my half-ass notes up in the box here. So if you want to see my wacky thought process, sometimes if you can zoom in and read it. But the one thing, you can almost toss that last one. This horse just doesn't seem to like an off track. So the Rebel was a pretty poor, it was on a hot pace too. I'm sure that had something to do with it, but just doesn't run as well on the slop. So you figure you get this one back on a fast track, and he just looks pretty classy, and it's going to be tough. Well, let's go to, we both have Bouncer. You have Bouncer in second. I have Bouncer on top. What do you think about this one? This is definitely a class jump, even though from a class standpoint of the race itself, it's not that far off. But just going up against Frosted Departure and the class and the races that he's coming out of, this seems more like a class jump for Bouncer, but who's shown to be a pretty talented horse, especially in 2023, where he's just upped his game from last year, where he was just sort of pedestrian.
Yeah, I think it's excuse me, back to my yawning. It's an interesting move by Mark Casse, that this horse ships here. I assume this horse has been with him at Saratoga. I just thought it was an interesting move, but you're right. 2 very good races this year. That first race took the lead and then got nabbed, but that was the first start in pardon me, the first race off the layoff is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Came back with in a state bred race at Gulfstream. Cassie's tough to keep track of, Pete. He runs everywhere. He is in Canada. He's in Belmont, Saratoga. He's everywhere.
And you look, 5 wins out of 16, 9 out of 16 in the money. So he's killing it at Colonial. So maybe that's part of the reason. Hey, I'm hot here. Let me bring a horse here, see if we can get $100,000. I got $100,000 purse here. So why not give it a shot? Plus, the one thing I liked about this one that I noted was started this year and was off about a 5-month layoff, picked up Lasix this year, and maybe that's part of the turnaround. So a combination of the natural improvement from 2 to 3 plus the addition of Lasix, this horse just seems to be a completely different animal at this point. Anything else you want to add on this?
Yeah, well, you always do a great job paying attention to the Lasix thing that the rest of us don't. But interestingly, the 6 horse whom I picked only in the company lines on the DRF 12 deep has only run on it twice, and he also gets it back this race.
Yeah, again, that's a weird one because it's not like he wasn't running well without it. So he was running basically the same or even a little bit better without it. So you never know Maybe you know more about when that decision is made, but it's hard to know unless
Well,
you know the horse.
yeah, I think the default is it's used, and
If
again,
if you can
it's
use it, kind
it's
of thing.
it's preventative. That's the thing. I think people, don't understand it. It is it's not a well. I guess it's performance enhancing if it prevents a horse from bleeding, but with all the stuff we got going on, I don't think we want horses bleeding
No,
as
no.
well if we don't need to.
Yeah,
But
I think there's enough troubles at this point.
yeah, I also like Brian Hernandez being on this horse. So
Yeah,
again, Caveman, if you want to really spread at the end, pick one of these two.
agree.
I'm going to go with both of them and see what happens.
RDW mentioned that the one is probably going to be the controlling speed, and based on sort of the pace figures and the rail, I assume that'll be the case. And we both have the 4 Top Recruit. To me, it wasn't really a top line kind of horse, though. It's just you have to pick somebody in third. And this one at least does have some back class. Came back this year, was on the turf, and then had a little bit of a slow start and not the best of trips in that last race. So if this horse hits second, it definitely wouldn't shock me. I just don't see him finishing ahead of the top 2 at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's running with some good horses. Obviously, ran in the Champagne. The turf, obviously, that wanted no part of turf. That the last race, two races back, the race on Preakness Day down at Pimlico, and also caught some good turf horses. The 6 kind of handled them pretty easily at Churchill last November, but that Street Sense race with 2 fills at Churchill, that looks like a pretty decent race based on how 2 fills came back.
Yeah, they had some high hopes for this one and just hasn't really materialized. You almost just have to see it once before you could trust it. All right, let's move on to the next one. Now we're going to get into sort of the meat and potatoes of this thing. Race 8, Grade 2, the Secretariat for 3-year-olds, purse $500,000, going a mile on the inner turf. We have a field of 8. We're saying 8. We're not sure about More Than Looks. We think maybe More Than Looks might go at Saratoga tomorrow, but for now we included it, and it's on. He's on my picks, so if he scratches, then maybe I'll give a sort of a third pick on the air while we're talking. So let's look at the PPs. You could start us off again. You are going with the 3 Nagarok in this one, and this is a really fun field. I mean, this one seems wide open. What'd you like about this one?
And this horse, I believe, was scratched last weekend at Saratoga, if I'm not mistaken, Pete. I know he was scratched. He was scratched somewhere recently because I had him. So what do I like about Nagarok? Well, I think obviously look at the consistency, 8 for 8 on the board lifetime. I'm a huge Graham Motion fan.
Yes.
Throw that in. Got beat by More Than Looks last time. I'm expecting More Than Looks to stay at Saratoga. I thought the Murphy, the race of Pimlico, was a pretty decent race. This horse was bet like he's supposed to win and won easily.
Yeah, that was a win for fun kind of race, that one.
I thought ran well in the race at Keeneland. Now, he did get beat by the horse immediately to his right, who kind of had everything his way that race. They went in that race at Keeneland, they went almost 25 seconds for the second quarter. Oof. So obviously being on the lead was a huge advantage for Mustache in that race. I think it's a potentially a different story. Although I will say this, Pete, the American Turf race at Churchill was a really good race. Webslinger, we saw Webslinger. He came back and ran huge last Saturday. He just got beat by a potential Chad Brown monster, right?
Yeah.
So this horse, I'm looking at it. I probably should have had this horse in there somewhere. But back to Nagarok, very consistent. Ran well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. You got to decide what you're going to do with the Appleby, right?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that one next. We both have it, so we'll talk about that one next.
Just missed in the Juvenile Turf. I'm not the biggest Jamie Spencer fan. However, I did look it up. Appleby and Spencer in the U.S. the last 5 years, 5 starts, 2 wins.
Yeah.
So Jamie Spencer can win shipping over here.
And he usually is coming over on a good horse when if
Right.
an Applebee's
Yeah.
bringing a horse over, it's usually quality. So he could ride a
Yeah.
quality horse for sure.
Yeah, although Appleby this year is not having nearly the year over here.
No, I actually had
that
that
he had last year.
Appleby 2 for 13 on the win end, 8 for 13 in the money. So his horses are still hitting the board, but only 2 for 13 in the U.S. in 2023. So definitely a huge change from last year where he was winning. It felt like he was winning every race that he came over for.
Yeah, he was like over 50%, wasn't he?
Oh, here we go. Trish in the comments. Single silver knot. I like the confidence.
Trish is with the Euro. Well, again, I couldn't argue against that. But the combination of Appleby not being quite as hot this year, I am not the biggest Jamie Spencer fan. I like when Buick comes over with the horse. Although Farbridge Pete, who everyone was down on, still ran a good third in that race up at Saratoga last weekend. Is a good horse.
Honestly, the biggest reason. Oh, sorry, you're going to say something.
No,
else.
I was just going to say, this horse's losses. You could say, well, he's 0 for 3 in the U.S., but none
Victoria
of them
Road
are terribly bad losses. Even the last time, that's 1.25 miles, folks.
Well,
and the time before that, 1.125 miles. I can see, Trish is obviously looking for this horse to get a snug rail trip, and could very well be the case.
See, actually, let's look at this trader betraying Arlington right now by being here to talk and watch us talk about the Colonial Downs. But welcome, Kyle, Betting and Boozing host, for anybody who doesn't know for some reason. But Kyle used to work at Arlington and is a devout Arlington person. So, we got Howard here, our open house here at school. Get to work, talk to people, stop watching the show. We don't need you in the chat.
Some poor parent wants to know what type of math he's teaching this year, and he wants to know if More Than Looks. Howard says, well, I'll let you know as soon as I find out if More Than Looks is shipping to Colonial or not.
Unbelievable. Do your job, man. Do some work. So to get back quickly to the race, my thought with Silver Knot is, and you sort of hinted at it, I like the cut back now that we're back at a mile. I feel like maybe this horse is going to be a miler. And if this horse is just a strong miler and the last two were just a little bit out of his range, then maybe you get a race closer to what we saw in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, who Victoria Road was just better, I thought. I had Victoria Road on top that day, and Silver Knot didn't have the best trip and was closing all over that horse. So my thought was at a mile. That's why I'm going with this horse on top. You have him in second, I should say. Yep. Let's jump quick. So we're a little bit, there's a few others we should talk about. So I had the 7 and we talked about it. So we think the 7's going to scratch out, but obviously if the 7 is in, Paul, I assume would you have had this horse just for, you don't have to talk about it too long. Would you have had this horse if for some reason he does run in this race? Would you have put him in your top 3, or did you not even pay attention to him?
Yeah, I would have used this horse on the board. So this is purely speculation.
Okay.
I probably should have tried to find out. Obviously, if the horse is going to Colonial, he was probably go today. Probably wouldn't go tomorrow. But yes,
look at this comment, Paul. Look at this garbage. I know your favorite host is not there. You know why they're not liking? Because they're so entrenched in watching when we're doing it. They don't really have time to be liking the video. They're just watching and listening intently. That's my assumption. So let's see.
Is it possible to block him, Peter?
It is. I can do that. And for the sake of all the kids at that school is what I should do. There is you know what I could do? I could either ban the user and delete their comments, or just put them in timeout. That would be a very teacher thing to do, is to just put Howard in timeout. I would love that.
Go to the corner.
Dunce cap in the corner. That's what we should do for sure.
Oh yeah. So again, Pete, I'm with you 100% on the cutback angle. This horse was a 7 furlong horse over in Europe. Of course, it is very typical. You say you run a mile over there, you can almost certainly get at least 1.125 miles over here, right?
Oh, for sure.
In the 1.125 miles race, interestingly, came from behind. Poor Richie Mullen, the guy who got hurt.
He got hurt.
Saratoga a few weeks ago, but I don't think the horse is going to be coming from the back of the pack in this race, although I think certainly can close. My only concern again is, occasionally the Euro jockey will just get them just too far behind, because
Yeah.
we all know every race over there is run. The last quarter mile is like a quarter horse turf race, right?
Well,
So
just to wrap this race up, in the Pennine Ridge, Calic had, I think it was pronounced Calic, I forget how the pronunciation. Calic did have a pretty slow lead and was basically the only pace, but
yeah,
so I feel like that one coming from the back, you're a little pace disadvantage. Whereas here, we didn't talk about, but Mostache definitely has speed and will be on the lead. Northern Invader looks like could have some speed, was, sitting off a really hot pace in the last one. Major Dude is a good horse who would be sitting right off. And then even Nagarok is never too far off. So I think there should be at least a little bit more pace in here for a horse like Silver Knot to close into. Anything else you want to hit here, or should we move on to the next one?
no, other than I probably need to have the 6 a little more. Not the 6, the 4. I probably have to take another look at. I did not have my top 3. That could have been a oversight.
It's funny, Victoria. Well, not funny for her, I guess. Victoria Oliver won for 86 in graded stakes over the past 5 years, but the win was Mostache back here in the Transylvania. So maybe this is her lucky horse, and she can get this one on the front end and get her second graded stakes win over that period. All right, let's move on to the 9th. Now we're going to hit the grade 1 races. The grade 1 Beverly D, another purse of 500,000, mile and 3/16 on the outer turf. We have a field of 7 with the favorite being a softer favorite being the 1 Fev Rover. And we have a horse in here, Rocky Sky, who I forget is cross-entered in, I think I put it in here. It's cross-entered, I think, tomorrow at Saratoga. Yes, Friday at Saratoga. So, again, we're not 100% sure if Rocky Sky is going to go here or at Saratoga. I hadn't seen anything. Paul, I don't know if you
that's an allowance. I'm just looking at the race.
It is, yes.
It's an optional claiming allowance.
It's a good field, but it's a fun field, but it's not a $500,000 race. So you would assume.
Yeah. Again, it's guesswork, but my guess is, if I had a guess, I'd think the horse is going to show up here.
Okay. So let's go with you have on top, and you and Tom Espinoza here, and it looks like Michael Lawson with the 5. So you're going with the 5 on top, Didia, for Ignacio Correas. What do you like about this horse? This horse has done absolutely nothing wrong since she's come over to the U.S. So I assume that's the first thing you like, is that this horse just always runs.
Yeah, my good friend Jessica Benson, who was worked at Colonial the last few years. I think it was the day of the fairground race, one of the 2 first races this year. She sent out a note saying, "Get this. This is the horse that's going to win the filly and mare turf." And that,
wow.
That kind of caught my attention. So
yeah, that'll get you.
Yeah, and so I've been on the horse since, and actually, she's run 3 very good races this year, 2 easy wins, and matched her top figure last time in a second to a Chad Brown horse who, if I remember correctly, had the run of the race market segmentation. So,
yeah, I'm showing it here where he had the lead, and then that horse went and stepped up and actually ran in the Diana against White Beam in Italian and Fev Rover, who I assume we'll talk about sooner rather than later. So yeah, it was no bad shakes to lose to that horse for Didia.
Yeah,
sure.
so I've been on Didier and played every time, and including the last time, but I see no reason why she can't come back here. Cheminot is a good jockey, had a good Keeneland meet.
Yeah.
You see 22% for the year.
Yeah, looks good
at
here.
Colonial Downs, 14% overall, which is not terrible. It's a good race, though, Pete. I'll tell you, there's some horses that I think several horses in here, Pete, that their best race puts them right 100%. On the wire.
For sure.
I mean, you look
real quick before we go off, Didia surprisingly has the first 2 races in the U.S. were at Colonial. So One of the
Yes.
few in the stakes races, you don't expect them to have a ton of Colonial Downs experience. This one came over as 2 for 2. I just wanted to point that
Yeah.
out before we move to the next one. Yeah, but go ahead. You were going to talk
Well,
about.
no, you picked the one,
You want me
Pete,
to
who
talk
I
Fed
almost
Rover?
did. So yeah, I mean,
So
what has he done wrong? She done wrong. should
yeah,
say.
I mean, this horse has come back and we always like that. So even from a move from 4 to 5, where you could see improvement from 4 to 5, it's not like it stops all of a sudden. You see, this horse was solid last year, ran a decent fourth, placed third in disqualification in the EP Taylor to Rougier and Moira. So not exactly easy company, but then comes back. What is that? 9 months later or so, 10 months almost later, pops a 99 buyer, lifetime buyer top, beats Moira again on a yielding turf, then runs in the Diana against in Italian, who's the best female turf horse in the country, generally thought of, and White Beam, who's right there, obviously now. And Fed Rover was coming. I mean, we could show a bit at the end here, but Fed Rover was
That was the Chad Brown Invitational,
the
right? He
Chad
had
Brown.
Didn't he have 4 out of the 5?
Unbelievable as usual. So we'll skip this. We'll see how far we can get. But yeah, talk about this race a little bit. I don't know. So when you're watching it, we're huge an Italian fan on this show.
Yeah.
I know I am. The one thing you notice is in Italian didn't really kick away, and White Beam is sort of sitting right off, and then you see Fev Rover is the one sitting there on the rail, and then if you watch, sort of kicks outside, so you lose a little bit of that natural momentum just from going sideways while you're trying to chase two monsters, and then as those two are battling, Fev Rover kind of kicks in late and makes it a little. I mean, I don't think she was never winning this race,
No.
but she made it a lot closer than I think people would have expected against those top two. So I definitely think she's on the up and up for sure, and I think still has improvement to go. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and ironically, Pete, if in Italian kicked away like she probably should have,
Yeah.
Fedorova probably could have followed her right up the inside. Fedorova wouldn't have needed to get off the rail because there would have been space there. In Italian was a heavy favorite in that race and coming off some huge races. So no, this is as I said, Fedorova is sitting right on top of 100 buyer, 299s in a row. We have the wild card of a first-time Euro with Graham Motion in here.
Yep.
Who knows?
Yep.
Who knows what's going to happen with that horse? Now he hasn't. It looks like he hasn't had the horse that long. Only one workout at Fair Hill. It was last Saturday.
Yep.
He doesn't have tremendous numbers first time over here, but he's a tremendous horseman, and he's especially tremendous with turf horses. And Johnny V sees fit to take them out. So, if you're playing ABCs, you better find a home for this 3-horse in your grid.
Yeah. How often you never want to get beat by a European horse in one of these turf races. And again, this is a good field. It's not, none of these horses are so proven where this horse can't come over and beat them. Yeah. As you see the stat here, Motion 0 for 18, wins 7 for 18 in the money with a trainer switch in graded stakes. So that's not related to just foreign shippers or anything.
Right.
But for whatever reason, the first race after the trainer switch isn't necessarily his thing from a win perspective at this level. So if you want to look for a knock, that could be one. It's not the hugest sample size in the world, but like you said, you can never discount a Euro coming over. You have the 6 in third. We have some time, so let's hit that one real quick as well. Is this one more of a win contender, or for you is this sort of maybe a B level on the backside of it?
Well, yes and yes. It's we're down to one of the other Chads, right?
Yep.
So he's got 1, 2. He only has 2 in here.
Is it
so?
Yeah.
I guess this one would be. No, actually, no. They're both 5, 6 to 1. Yeah, I mean, I thought for a layoff last time, a long layoff, the horse ran well enough. Lost to another Chad and consumer spending.
Yep.
One thing I wanted to go back just quickly, Pete, to that 3. There are Euros that ship over here because, ironically, they want the firmer turf.
Yeah.
I got a funny feeling this is one of them. Heavy turf, 5th over there. Soft turf, he ran 2nd, but then good turf over there is probably closer to our firm, right?
Yeah.
Win, 2nd win.
Now this race here, you can this race is a monster race, and Russian Emperor Warren Point are two top notch horses, and it's
correct,
a
grade
2.5.
1 race.
So you
Yes.
can't look at that and only lost by 5, even though finished 8th.
Right.
So you can't look at that and say, oh, doesn't like it a little closer to good, because
Right.
that was a monster field.
And
anyway.
then 3 in a row after that on soft or good soft.
Yeah, no, that's a
maybe,
great point.
and again, this is conjecture as much as you could think, but we do know, we know for a fact. In fact, there's a horse running at Saratoga tomorrow, in the Hall of Fame, and I'm going to tell you his name is Ocean Vision.
Yep.
Ocean Vision is a horse over from France. We previewed that horse. Sean Clancy previewed him in the special last Friday when we thought the race would be last Friday, and the trainer Tim Dornworth, who it's his last start with the horse. The horse has been sold, but said outright he wants it firm, and he was hoping it didn't rain. So
yeah,
I got a funny feeling, and I have no idea what the weather's going to be like at Colonial. Hopefully, it's not like the rest of the East Coast. Right?
No.
Well, you're down there. How's the weather in Maryland? Right?
I mean, it looks great. I haven't really paid attention to the weekend since we weren't going to be here, but I assume I think someone might have mentioned it's going to be nice. I can't remember earlier in the chat, maybe.
Yeah. So this horse, that's so back to our original point. If that is the case, then that makes the 3 even more playable. So now, now take a look at the 4. The 4, big step up in class. Ran a huge race last time I had him. The wins are so few and far between. I remember them. And Brendan Walsh goes to Jamie Spencer. So this is a tough race. I think someone put in the chat, it could be a stampede to the wire. But I do think my girl Didier here can go either way. You've seen her come from way behind, and then you've seen her be tactical. She was very tactical in the Modesty.
Yeah.
I'm still going with Didier, but I think there are several other horses who can win.
No, I agree, and I think that there's not speed in here, so a lot of them are probably going to be looking for similar trips. I mean, if you look at it, Gina Romantica likes to sort of sit just off. If Rocky Stride does come here, likes to sit somewhere just off. Didier is better, I think, when being closer, but has the ability to come from off. So, but in this race, I don't think you're going to get a hot pace. Mise en scène likes to come. She likes to come from a little bit further back. We're not 100% sure. I think this one is more mid-pack when I watched a couple of the replays. But again, once they get here, you never exactly know. Jan's Girl is a little out of her league in this race. And then Fev Rover, I mean, she's done a little bit of everything. She could come off. She could sit close. So I agree with you. I think this is just a really tough race. I think it's wide open. And if you're looking, if it might be, hey, if you can get this horse at a half decent price, maybe you take a shot and maybe your conjecture is right about the fast track.
I'll tell you what, Pete, they better make sure that Mr. Pratt doesn't lead them on a merry chase here.
He
put this horse right on the pace last time, and it was a long layoff, and she got passed by a few horses in the stretch. It looks like the lead, to your point, Pete, the lead is there for the taking, and they better just be careful Mr. Pratt doesn't become one of those races where after the race we say, how the hell did they let that horse go all the way?
I mean, how many times do we do that, and how many times is it a Chad that does it where you're like, oh, okay, they're going to let this Chad just run around the track? All right, so I don't have anything else there. Let's move to the big one. This one might take a while. I have a funny little anecdote about when I got your picks later. So we got the race 10, the grade 1 Arlington Million. $1 million, not surprising based on the name of the race. Although you never know in horse racing, they would be someone who would name it the Million and have a different purse. 1.25 miles on the outer turf, rail at 70 feet. So just to point that out, we have a field of 11 going here, and we have a very, very tepid favorite in the 4 Atone. So I'll bring up our picks, which is funny enough. So if you could see our picks on the bottom, I have 9, 7, 8. Paul has 2, 5, 11. So we have completely 6 horses named out of the 11. We have 6 completely different ones. And when we get to our pick 5 tickets, I went 4 deep, Paul went 4 deep, and we have 8 different horses in this race. So I don't know if that's ever happened on the show before, but so we're going to talk about this one for a bit. We'll start with you. Your top horse, the number 2, Never Explain. Was this a race where you're like, hey, almost everyone can win it, and I'm just going to sort of narrow a bit? Is that where you landed on sort of your first pass through?
Yeah, basically. The Bowling Green, which was just 2 weeks. First of all, atypical for Shug to run a horse back in 2 weeks.
Yep.
So the horse has got to be really in form. God love Channel Maker, 9 years old, still winning stakes races. But, that was one of those races where Channel Maker just went and no one else really went with him.
And that was the one where Rebel's Romance was loaded and wound up throwing.
Yeah,
right,
Rebel.
where they clipped. I think they clipped heels. Right? Is that what I can't remember what happened? And
yes,
that's when Ryan Mullen got hurt.
That's the race. Rich Mullen.
Richie Mullen. When I said Ryan Mullen, Richie Mullen. Yeah.
And I got to tell you, and I saw something online this week that the way the pace was, Channel Maker would have been tough to catch. I think Rebel's Romance was winning that race.
Oh, that horse was loaded. That horse was loaded. Yeah, that horse was loaded for sure.
What, 5 lengths off at the time, Pete? Roughly.
That's nothing.
Wasn't that far back?
Yeah.
So they went 50-4 in a 1 3/8 race. They went 50-4 for the half.
Crawling.
So I don't think this horse had any real chance to come from that far behind. Thought he ran okay at Monmouth. We liked Catnip that day.
Yep.
And it's a step up in class, but boy, this is, Kyle and Howard can take heart in the fact that this is not a very good run. It's a competitive.
It's a great betting race, yeah, but right, you're not going to be writing home to your grandchildren about, hey, I remember when I saw Never Explain win the 2023 Arlington Million or whoever.
To quote Rick Pitino, John Henry is not cantering through that door. Holy Toledo.
Yeah.
Which is why, I think that says why we could end up so deep, Pete. Maybe people should just play the other 3. That we got 8 covered.
We got 8. Yeah. Make sure we call those out. That's the one we should. Really
Masterpiece. So we look at Masterpiece.
That's
we saw what Dutro did with his first time with White Barrio last Saturday. Dutro took over this horse last time, ran a good second as the favorite to another Chad horse,
and it was on yielding turf, so you never know.
Adamo, Pete, has run good races. Closed like hell to win the United Nations last year. Closed like hell to almost get to lose to another Chad horse, Tribuvon, who was running very well at the time.
Yeah.
Again, last 2 races last year, looks like he didn't run a step, but trying to close into slow paces. So, I think it's wide open. Santine won this race last year.
Let's stay on the 9 for a second, because that was my top pick. And
you're
you're getting a Chad and a Flavian Pratt at 10-1. And my thought with this one, well, first of all, again, you could sort of see my notes. Chad Brown, 35% on the win end, 60% in the money, first after these long 300 to 400 day layoffs on turf. Now, it's funny because if you change those windows a bit, the number changes, but it just shows that he can get a horse ready. And we always know that he can get one of his better horses ready. So, yeah, this one comes over, decent second, is off for 4 months, basically. Runs a third to Santine in the grade 1, is a little bit further back, then gets this nice 2 second to a race where Tribuvon, that was one, like you said, where he was up by 7, 8. And they just weren't catching him. And that horse, when he would do that over the last couple of years, you just weren't catching him. Then winds up winning the United Nations, then gets a little bit of, maybe a little bit of cut in the ground in the last 2 and didn't love it. And it also, Gufo, Mirror Mission, Warlike Goddess, decent horses, solid horses. And that was going 1.5 miles. So my thought is, if we can get this horse back to here, we can get this horse back a little bit of a cutback. Now, hopefully we're getting firm turf again. This horse is at 5 now. I think maybe we see a better version of this horse. We see this version. And if you can get this horse at 10, which I doubt it necessarily just from the connection, but if you can get this horse as the fourth or fifth choice, third or fourth choice, whatever it might be, I think you got a shot to maybe get this ticket and get this ticket to pay out a little more than you would expect with a Chad Brown potential winner. So you wanted to talk. Yeah, go ahead.
Are we surprised that I'm looking up now? Are we surprised that Up to the Mark is not in this race?
I am, right? I mean, I hadn't looked to see what the
He
plan
won.
was.
He won the Manhattan on Belmont Day, June 10th. So it's a 2-month layoff. He has no workouts in the last 60 days. So something's up.
Something might be up there, which is odd.
I was not aware that. Were you aware that horse was on the shelf? I was not.
I was not, and that would explain it, because you would think if that horse, what do you think that horse goes off right now against this field? Probably 2 to 5, 3 to 5.
Well, I was going to say even tops. Yeah, even tops. So, yeah, geez,
I'm not even sure if they all come if he's in this race. They might not even all come.
And I want to say, Pete, that Todd mentioned this race after the Manhattan.
I mean, it's a $1 million race, and it's winnable against a relatively soft, older turf division. So
I just got a text from some guy named Howard. It says Up to the Mark is injured.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. How do we not hear that? All right. Well, let's move on. So you have Rock Emperor, who this is a horse, another Chad Brown. This is a horse that I never bet and never get right. And if I do happen to put him in something, he craps the bed. And when I don't put him in, he actually runs a half decent race. What's your idea with this one? Anything? Just throwing darts at the wall?
No, it's get as many Chads as you can in a race like this. Quite frankly, Pete, I don't think I have a Damo. Yeah,
which is funny because that's the one I have on top. So of course, the way we're going in this race.
Yeah, so this is the one that this horse has won a grade 1. I thought sometimes when you have a Chad that needs the race, needs the win a little more than the others, like needs the graded stake or needs the grade 1. But this horse has won it. He's won at grade 1. One thing we know, Pete, we understand why it's an 11-horse field.
Yeah, right? Exactly. There's nobody in here that you're super worried about. And the funny thing is, so many of the horses, and we'll get to a couple more. So many of these are sort of come from behinders. So you're going to need a little bit of pace up front. And a lot of these are going to be trying to run the same race. So I could see this one being a blanket where either one horse will get away and just win and we'll be pissed because it won't be one that we have, or it'll just be a blanket finish and you hope you're the one that gets the sort of the cleanest run or the cleanest trip.
Well, that might be why a tone is 7-2 on the morning line.
I think so, right?
I thought that was low, but based on what you just said, and based on the fact that Kendrick is going down to ride,
here, I know it was an optional claimer 80. No,
Kendrick is not a sit and wait type of jockey. So, I know it's 1.25 miles, but certainly Kendrick could lead them all the way around there, because you are right. And actually, that is one of the reasons why I did land on the 2. I think the 2 has races that show he can be more tactical and be forward and be on the pace and maybe get first run on all of these closes. But I got to tell you, I'm certainly going to play this pick 5. What the hell I'm going to do in this race?
I mean, if you're going ABC, you're almost including. I mean, I'm trying to look. Masterpiece is a horse who I just feel like Masterpiece is maybe not as good, maybe on the win end where he might have been in the past, but it wouldn't, you wouldn't jump out of your seat. Still the best, from a time form figure. You see this 123. If it does heat up, which I don't imagine it will, but if for some odd reason it does, this horse has a closing kick. And like you said, second race with Dutrow, who's working miracles apparently right now. So that wouldn't be surprising. Strong Quality is a horse that I have in second. You don't have at all. This was what we were just talking about. Again, did step up in the Manhattan. It was coming from an optional claiming win, then an allowance win stretching out. Then they put right into 1.25 miles grade 1 Manhattan. and doesn't run bad. I mean, look at this pace. Look at these figures. I mean, you're talking 164, 149, cutting crazy fractions, and still only loses by 5 1/4 to Up to the Mark, Soldier Rising. Not the greatest field, but you see Red Knights in there. I mean, it's a pretty good field, and this horse ran pretty well against this field. I feel like now that he's had a taste of this level of competition, he's another one who's outside of a tone. So Castellano could say, okay, if a tone goes, I could sit off potentially and do sort of like what we did 3 races back. Or if a tone doesn't go, this horse can clear and see if he's the one that could take him around the track. And at 12-1, with only 3 turf starts under his belt, I'll take a shot with that for sure.
Yeah, if I'm going ABC speed, I need a couple of D's and a couple of E's in the
Exactly. I don't know if the alphabet goes that deep. 4956 here for Mike Austin. The last, so I have Catnip, which again I think is similar in vein to what you were talking about, but Never Explain. I think this horse is pretty tactical, should be able to sit close, and will be behind probably a tone and strong quality. And maybe again could be one that gets first run, and you're getting this horse at 8-1 now. And then you have Santine in your third spot. Won this race last year, like you mentioned. This one was at Churchill, going 1 1/8. So a little bit of a different, and hasn't just sort of ran that race and then went in the crapper a bit. But what are you looking
and they
for?
Tried. I'm looking for a ridiculous race that someone's going to have to run third and fourth. They tried the dirt. I saw the race at I saw the turf race at Churchill. Again, no match, but no match for Up to the Mark, right?
Yeah.
And Hong Kong Harry was a real good West Coast, one of the best West Coast turf horses.
Yep.
And then oddly, they went to the dirt in the Blame, and that race was not a good race.
No.
And then the Hanshin, which was run at Ellis, the Hanshin in 2022 was won by Cody's Wish at Churchill Downs. The Hanshin was not a good race either. So, although I am a Brendan Walsh guy, and Tyler is the regular jock, and he's down there to ride, I don't know.
I mean, it's one where it doesn't. It feels a little bit like they're reaching by trying the different surfaces. They're trying different surfaces, different distances. They're trying a lot of everything. So they're maybe just hoping that they can regain some of that past form. But again, in a wide open race, again, we're not looking at. There's nobody going to win. Most likely, no one's coming out of this to win the Eclipse Award for best older turf male. But I think from a betting standpoint, it's definitely a race. As you can see on the screen here, from like an ABC, I have every horse except the 1. So the 1 is pretty much a lock to win. So I see Jim in the green room there. So let's us jump ahead to race 11. We'll try and zip through this one. Yeah. And then, so if we look at race 11, see if we can get paid on this pick 5, as PTF likes to say on his pod. We got allowance optional claiming 25 per 70,000, 1 1/16 on the inner turf. We're going 12 deep here, and the favorite, this is a great betting sequence. We've got another very soft favorite, the 10. This name is okay, 7-2, Cooper Mendoza. You have, let me bring up our banners here. You are going with the 4 horse. Watch this birdie here, who I definitely took a strong look at myself. What do you like about this one?
Well, Pete, sometimes you look at a maiden race and you say, I'm going to bet the first timers because I'm not really impressed with the horses who have run.
Yeah.
I'm going to carry that to this race. it is tough to go up against winners for the first time. I'm not that impressed with all these other horses who have won. I look, my thinking is, if you're going to have a horse win a race off a maiden win, in my opinion, this is the field for it.
Yeah.
They're not terrible, but I went through it a couple of times because I do kind of default to that thinking, because it is tough. It's tough to go against winners. But you know what? The horse ran jumped up 70
17.
17 points last time and put up a 77. And I'm going through, the other horses, and I'm thinking, well, he's probably going to go forward a little. The 7, who's a bomb's got an 83 on turf, so that's on turf. There's several horses in here. This is turf. What am I talking about? So the 7 horse has an 83 on turf. The 8 has an 80. My point is, it's reasonable to see the 4 progressing off the 77 into the low 80s, and I think the low 80s is going to put you squarely in the thick of this.
100%. And it's funny, as you can see here, I had this horse as an A, just didn't make my top 3. But the one thing I did like is that it came out of nowhere, and that is a huge jump, but it wasn't that nothing caused it. So maybe it was the stretch out to the mile and the 16th could have helped. Maybe this horse is going to like the added distance again. So again, sometimes you're looking for a reason why a horse jumps up like that, and it's not just, hey, the track was funny that day and it was super, it was just sort of juiced up and everybody ran a better buyer. This one, maybe this longer distance can do it. And again, like you said, there's no world beaters in here. Real quick, we both have the 9. Why don't you, somebody who mentioned Rob mentioned it. I think RDW mentioned the 9. This one just
racing downwind did as well.
Yep. So this one just clearly has, at least if you look at the last couple races, clearly has a pace advantage. And sometimes that could be enough. Was that your thought? That was my thought, I know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. And, I just, the 1 for 12 prompts me not to pick them on. Prompts me not to pick them on the win end. Certainly the obviously Vancouver out of Arahi Mare. There's a reason the horse has been on turf her whole life except for one start. I think the horse is right there. I just, and will probably be a B on my ABCD, my ABCD grid. But I just, the 1 for 12 is a little non-appealing.
It's hard. Does have the win at Colonial, is the only career win. Hits the board a lot, so definitely a horse you want to play.
Well, tell us why the 8's going to win, Pete. I don't have the 8, and I need him.
I was just going to get to it. So this is another one where we have another one that has experience here, which isn't surprising because of the race we're in. We're out of the graded stakes. 2 for 3 here. I like that. Was it basically 3 bad runs in a row? So it wasn't looking good. Jumps into a stake back at Colonial, gets the win, took some money. The thing that I liked the best was actually had some good races back here at Colonial. Maybe just likes this track and maybe just didn't like the Laurel and Delaware and comes back here and is just comfortable here. Trombetta, look at this. You see, if you could read that, it's 14 out of 20, 6 out of 20 wins, 14 out of 20 in the money here at Colonial, and 29%, 68 in the past year here. So definitely has an affinity for this track. I think could sit mid-pack, should get a decent run at them. And again, my basic argument with this horse was maybe this horse just likes Colonial, and we're getting him back here again. Now he's going from $125,000 stake to, what was this, an optional claimer, 25. So I feel like you said, I don't love anybody in this race. It's a spread race for me. So why not take a shot who maybe for a horse that just likes the course? So we have Jim in the bullpen here. So why don't we jump to our pick 5s, and then we'll bring Jim on. We'll get his take on. We'll see if he has any takes on the Arlington Million or any of the other races here. Let me remove this for now so we can look at our beautiful faces for a little bit. Let's bring up Paul's pick 5 first. So I'll read it off. Paul has a $96 pick 5. 1-6 with 1-3 with 1-5-6 with 2-4-5-11 with 2-4-9-10, and again that's $96. Paul, what was your theory here?
Well, my theory is we need a lot of coverage in the last 2 races that I think you and I just documented, right? And if you were doing it properly, you'd probably pick 1 in the first leg, and spread even more in those 2, and perhaps include that 3 horse we talked about in leg number 2. I have the 3 in leg number 2. Oh, good. Oh no, leg number three.
Aren't you happy when you look at your picks?
leg number three. I'm sorry. The 3 is that euro that my theory I might like the firm. So yeah, if you're doing it right, you'd probably take a stand. Again, I would be very surprised if anyone other than 1 and 6 won the first leg and need as much coverage as I can at the end.
No, I agree with you there. And actually, it's funny when we'll get to my ticket now. My ticket, $96. Same structure, basically.
Same exact.
Oh no, it is exact, right? Yeah, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4.
Yeah, there you go.
I have 1, 6 with 1, 7 with 1, 3, 5 with 3, 7, 8, 9 with 4, 8, 9, 11. And again, I don't have to say too much more. Same thinking as Paul. First leg, it looks like those are too obvious. My second leg is actually where I have more than looks. So if that one scratches out, I would probably add another horse. I'm not sure who I would maybe add, maybe Montage, because I'd like to have some speed in there. But again, just went a little bit deeper. And like we said, we'll bring, actually, let me bring Jim on real quick now. Jim, what's going on, Jim? Let me give him his introduction first. We have Jim Miller, director of racing and every other thing you could possibly think of title-wise at Hawthorne. But how's it going, Jim?
Good. I can tell you, it pains me to no end listening to you guys talk about a card that has the Secretariat, Beverly D, and Arlington Million on it, and it's not taking place at Arlington Park. The place where I got started in racing, I just drove by it 3 days ago. So to see what it looks like right now, it does. It pains me greatly to hear the names of these races. It's a very good card, but there's only one place these races really should be run.
I mean, it says it's still in the name, so amen to that. Although we still like the races, we're still, me and Paul, I know we're still degenerate horizontal players, so we're gonna bet it, and we're gonna bet it regardless because it's a good field. Did you have any thoughts? So what I was going to tell you, Jim, is you came on after this in the Arlington Million. There's 11 horses. Paul and I went 4 deep in our pick 5s, and we have 8 different horses out of the 11. So, which is unprecedented, I think, for this show.
Who's got the Chad Brown horse on their ticket? Adamo.
I have Adamo. It's my top pick, actually.
Okay, that's who my top pick was in the race too.
Oh, see, now I actually feel smart. So
great. So you're costing me money, Jim.
No. You never know. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, Chad Brown off an extended layoff is absolutely incredible. I mean, you're not just talking 30 to 60 days, you're talking 180 plus days. It's still just an incredible record. He does such a fine job getting these horses ready. And it's not like you're trying to get the horse ready coming back for an overnight stake, a 75,000, 100,000. You're coming back for $1 million race. So you're coming back with intent. You're coming back for reason. And you think the horse is ready. The other horse I kind of liked was Northern Invader in the Secretariat. I was looking at that horse as a little bit of a price. I didn't see if you guys had that horse on your tickets either, but just a lightly raced racehorse who is kind of the unknown in that race. And it's one of those horses that I really think might just be able to continue that progression and maybe do so. Maybe you catch a little bit of a price on the horse too.
No, and I think, go ahead, Paul, you're going to say something?
No, I was going to say, I think, Jim, you're definitely going to get the price only because, the whole coming off a maiden win going into a grade 2. But Cherie DeVoe she's a Sharpie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not the name to some, right? It's not the name to some. We know Cherie DeVoe, and we know the ability of not only her as a trainer, but just how horses can progress and step up. You got to take a shot sometime, and there's not a ton of 3-year-old, really solid 3-year-old turf races earlier on in the year. So now you're starting to hit that point. I think it's the right time to take that chance.
Yeah, we actually we were a little bit over the board.
We talked about we weren't sure, Jim, if More Than Looks is going to stay at Saratoga for tomorrow's race, which we are speculating that horse will. Which, if that's the case, then maybe Northern Invader you got moved up even a little more.
Yep.
Because Cherie would be separating them.
Right. Exactly. So, right. Why run 2 when 1 will do? Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, geez, Jim has costed me money. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great race though, and Northern Invader was close for me, Jim. That was sort of maybe the last one off. So if More Than Looks scratched, that's one. It was probably like a Montage, Northern Invader, because you want to have sort of one of the horses that's going to be maybe near the top, and I think Montage we know is going. Northern Invader looks like could go with, maybe sit just off, and we'll see if the step up a bit if he's able to still, because Mustache is tough to pass. So if Northern Invader's sitting there, and then I have Silver Knot. So Silver Knot was my top choice. I like to cut back to the mile, but I think that's a fantastic race. And I think most of them, maybe not the 8. T at 1 is the only one I thought didn't have a super or a really gigante. The 2 long shots, but the other ones, if any of them won, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
It's a very good race. I think that might be actually the best betting race on the card.
Yeah, well, we said the Arlington just because we're so dumb. We have every horse in the race, so we figure, it has to be a good betting race. We hope, since we can't decide on anything. So that's the hope from our perspective. You know
why, Jim, this is a tough race is I think Silver Knot could win this race by 6 lengths. Yeah. And I think if he told me he's going to run 3rd or 4th, I wouldn't be shocked.
Right, exactly. And it's going to come down to price, because Silver Knot's going to take the action. Then everybody else kind of fades away a little bit, and some horses are going to get overlooked. So definitely. Yeah,
well, we hope, Michael. We're speculating on more than look. But
yeah, well, listen. So, all right. Well, we're going to get to Hawthorne. Jim and I are going to talk through the late pick 4 at Hawthorne on Sunday. Paul, you have any parting shots for our viewers before you head off into the sunset?
Sunset. I'm off slaving for Uncle Howard.
I know. Actually, he's got to get Jim. He's got to get back and finish tomorrow's Saratoga power pick. So Paul's working.
Okay, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Howard gets a little bit of a relax going over to school. I mean, he gets some time off. It's a vacation for him.
I mean, dealing with parents is a hell of a lot easier than picking these cards.
Right,
it seems
exactly.
Like.
Don't be so sure about that.
Well, maybe the first week. Later in the semester, when the grades start coming out,
maybe in elementary school.
Right. You'll find out how tough of a grader Howard is. Really,
that's true. Yeah, that is true. So
all right, gentlemen, I'm off to work.
All right, Paul. Good luck.
Jim, great seeing you as always.
Good seeing you too, Paul. Good luck.
Thanks.
See you later, Paul. All right, Jim, me and you, let's talk through. Last time you and I did this, I think I had on the show had the pick 4. So maybe Hawthorne and talking to you is maybe that's my remedy for some of the bad picks that I had at Saratoga last week. But we shall see.
Saratoga's been weird, though. I mean, even watching today, to see back-to-back days off the turf. You're seeing kind of the way races are unfolding in that a little bit. It has. It's been a little bit of a tough card, just overall too.
Well, we've been doing every time we do a show or we do picks, you wind up a third of the card scratches. So half your picks go in the crapper, and you're sort of scrambling when you figure out who's actually in these races and are they back on the turf. Hey, Christine, no, we're still here. We're going to talk some Hawthorne, so stick around with us if you want. We're going to get to the good stuff now. But, yeah, Saratoga's been tough, and you really just want a race. You just want a couple days where all the races stay on the turf, all the horses run, and we can get some actual good quality
I was
races.
surprised they weren't on the turf today, actually. So
yeah. Although they did have a match race, basically, that was won by like 20-something lengths. So that's something.
They scratched from 12 to 2. I was watching that because we tried to stagger our races today just to avoid Saratoga early in the day and Del Mar later in the day. So you look up and you see a 2, and you're like, okay, that's the race where we get positioned, and we actually set our post time, so we're able to jump ahead of them the next race.
Oh, you did.
And just watch it for that reason.
And, the bomb, and I saw some jokes on Twitter, the long shot won that race. Whatever it was, the even money shot.
Yeah.
All right. So Jim and I are going to talk through the late pick 4 on Sunday at Hawthorne. So it starts with race 5. So I didn't refresh this. There's no odds yet, right?
No, there are now. There's odds, since I do the line, there better be odds.
Well, I didn't know if they actually hit it yet. So I know. Yeah, you do the line. So if anybody wants to curse about any of these morning lines, then we can yell at Jim right here. Yep. But yeah, these are the first time I'm seeing them. So I'll see how some of my horses are. So 5th race, we have Claiming 5,000, purse 15.5, 6 furlongs on the dirt. We have a field of 8, and we have a set by Jim morning line favorite of Sunny is Not So Funny at 5-2. Let me switch to now. We're going to go some Hawthorne banners. And Jim, you have the 2-horse Time Heist, which is a fun for any Marvel fans. The Time Heist is from Endgame, if anybody cares about that. So you have the 2 Time Heist. What do you like about this one?
Yeah, this is a really tough race. And the one thing I want to premise with this sequence, yesterday's late pick 4
Mhm.
I think the longest price was maybe $20, $24, and it paid $10,000. So it was one of
Wow.
those things. Just beat a couple favorites, and you have a chance for a really good return. This sequence is similar. Time Heist, I like for the fact that this is a horse that might just get the right setup. It was a really brutal start in that last out, and the horse still came running at him late in the lane. But if you look at some of the prior races earlier on in the meet, especially that race back in April, that was a really good effort. That was a race where the horse won by 4, claimed out of that race. The vet voided the claim after that. So trainer Jim Watkins had to go ahead, pay the money to get the horse off the vet list, take the time and come back. But he didn't come right back for 5,000. He's like, I'm going to try the starter. Tried the starter, ran okay, finished 5th. Then you run for an open 62.50 at FanDuel. Then you came back for the 5 in their last out. So they're back where they were claimed before, back where they won by 4 3/4 lengths. But I think the horse might get overlooked just because you have a massive plunger and Sonny is not so funny in here. So 6-1 on Time Heist, definitely worth the look.
Yeah, I mean, I was with you. I had this horse in second, and I'm looking at it the same way you are. And again, you sort of go, you get a little horse for course. Now doesn't win 1 for 9, doesn't like to win generally, as you see. This is what scares you, the 1 for 22 at the distance. But again, 13 in the top, 13 in second and third, 6 out of 9 in second and third at Hawthorne. So this horse knows how to get there. Now you just have to find the right field, find the right level, and get a better trip. Like you said, that last trip was pretty awful. Now I'm hoping we get a better trip. I think, as my notes say here, just sort of fits here. And at this level, maybe this is the time. And if we can get that 6-1 price, even the better.
Well, and here's the thing that's interesting, because the horse you have on top is the same trainer, Jim Watkins, and that's the 4, Cindy's G-Man. Jim Watkins, and I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, he's the president of the Illinois HBPA down at Fairmount Park at FanDuel Racing. Yet look at the amount of horses that he's run at Hawthorne this meet, and he's winning at a 24% clip. So he's coming up to Hawthorne with a lot of horses, and it's nearly 5-hour ship to ship these horses up from FanDuel. So anytime he ships up, you're shipping with intent. You're going up there with that chance to try to win races. He kind of has both ends covered here. Cindy's G-Man is wigging it to the front. That's a horse that's going to show speed, maybe the fastest of all. And if that horse can clear, could take him the whole way around. Time Heist is the one that kind of rates back and runs at him late. So he's kind of got this field sandwiched a little bit. Neither of them are going to be the favorite. I laid both horses at 6-1, and there's the potential that you could get that on both of these runners.
Well, I was actually, I think you're right about. We'll get to the favorite in a second. I thought this one might take the money just from sort of the pace advantage and something that you see there. And again, I like going back where, the last, and this is maybe what does get you the price, though, I guess, is the last 3 just don't look that good. And it muddies the form up. But if you come back to the Hawthorne races, you see the win here, you see the second, you see 5 out of 6 in the money. I did have a stat. Watkins and Felix, the combination, dirt sprints at Hawthorne in the past 5 months, 8 for 17 on the win end, 13 for 17 in the money. 1 with Felix on the front end last time. All those little things I like, to where we can maybe recapture that form.
And it's racehorses like this. He usually goes to Felix when it's a speed type of racehorse. Julio's very good at getting these horses out of the gate, but still saving something for the lane. And that's one of the things where he's not just putting a bug rider on there. He's just going to wing it and go the whole way. Julio's a smart veteran rider. He'll get the horse in position and then have something saved for late. So it's definitely a horse that does figure. And the other thing too, you're right. The last 2 races at FanDuel Racing are the reason people might overlook this horse, because they say, oh, it's FanDuel, the racing's not that good. Well, Scott Becker has a full stable of horses there that are very good. Steve Manley's a guy that wins at a lot of places and does very well. Jim Watkins does good there too. There are some horses that are actually pretty good racing down there, but when you get some of those figures that don't look that great, that's where you catch your price.
Yeah, that's what that would be lovely. So you have the 5. Sonny is not so funny in second, and you have this horse. You set this horse at 5-2. I assume it's mostly just because of the class drop.
Right. Look at the race 3 back. The horse was 6-5 and ended up running second in an allowance race in an open allowance back in June.
Yeah.
The thing about it for this horse too, you're starting to get near the end of the meet. We have a month left of racing for the meet, and then there's going to be an extended break at Hawthorne, something that we've never done before, because this was always the Arlington Park time of year, and then Hawthorne raced in the fall. So we end the first week of September. So what you're going to see is some of these horses that trainers may not want to carry on throughout, say, 4, 5, 6 months of an off season. They may drop in and say, I want to get that victory, and I want to get the victory and get claimed. this horse is going to get claimed in this race. So
Yeah.
he'll drop down, he'll get claimed for 5,000. If you have the chance to go out there and get the purse and get another 9,000 on top of it, that could be the reason why a horse like Sonny Is Not So Funny is in this spot. Mike Rivas doesn't usually just drop horses for no reason. He does it with intent. And this is probably the reason, because he's a claiming trainer and he gets claimed off of quite a bit as well.
And this is one I feel like this was probably the fourth horse on my list, and I probably should move this one up. Do you want to talk anything about Risky Boy? I see you have a nice 12-1 shot in your third. Is that sort of is this a play for the top end, or is this just sort of more of an underneath kind of horse?
It's an underneath type of horse. Here's what you're going to need. Cindy's G-Man hurts so bad, and Ginsburg all to remain in the race. The three horses that can all show some speed. If that's the case, this is a horse that could come running at him late. I think the start 3-back is good enough to at least be in the mix. That was an open 8,500 race. This is a race that's a little bit of an easier race. It's going a 16th of a mile further. I just thought at a price the horse could possibly sneak in late.
Yeah, it's funny. I had the note here, fits at this company, but doesn't like to win.
Right.
Should be an underneath horse for sure. And if you can catch a price, and then if you can beat that favorite, and maybe the drop down isn't there, and you can get either the 4, or you can get the 4 or the 2 on the top, and you can get this 3 underneath. Now you're talking about a nice vertical play. Right. And I'll be more than happy with that if that happens. Anybody else you want to talk to here? Oh, go ahead.
No, but you're going to see when we get to my pick 4 ticket why that race is so tough. Because
that's right. Now I remember.
It's one of those things where I thought that was the race that is the hardest race of the sequence and the chance to catch a price. So trust me, I will be playing, or I'll be cheering against Sonny Is Not So Funny for sure, and you'll see why when we get to the pick 4.
Now I completely remember that. All right, let's get to the second leg. I'll bring up our picks here. Second leg, race 6, claiming 20,000, purse 21. We're going a mile on the turf. The rail's at 10 feet. We have 10 going. We have with one main track only also eligible, but we have 10 going with another soft favorite. I like all these soft favorites we've been seeing tonight. Forward Curve, the 10 for Scott Becker, as you said, 7-2. And you are going with, let me see as it scrolls through. You are going with the 3, Millard Smile. What was your choice on this one about?
Yeah, well, here's the thing about the 2 speed horses are to the outside, Slava Ukrainian, Forward Curve. They're going to have to work at that mile distance. They're going to have to kind of wing it to get crossed over into that first turn, because it's not a real long run into the first turn.
Is this the race I remember where the outside isn't as successful at this configuration? I think I checked that one, and I thought there weren't many wins, if not 0, on sort of those outside post positions.
Yeah, the 2 hardest distances, 7.5 and 1 mile on the turf, because it's a short run into the turn. A lot of times those horses are either having to really wing it, and then they're just kind of running out of steam, or they're getting hung wide. So with the speed to the outside, Millard Smile is a horse that the big question is how they're going to handle the turf, because this is a horse that only has 1 start on the turf, and it wasn't a great start, but it was some time back. You got to dig through the past performances to find it. But here's the thing about Millard Smile. Those races were against so much tougher company from what you've seen in those recent starts. Notary has been very good. Look at the race 3-back. The winner of that race was Active Fool. Active Fool was the winner of the Hawthorne Derby on the turf course for Larry Ravelli. And this horse finished 3rd behind Active Fool in that spot. Now you're finding things, what I feel is a much easier. The 29-3 off of those optional 40s, and that you just have to take to the turf a little bit. But with the speed to the outside, I think this horse sits back and comes running at him late. And the other thing, too, Orlando Mojica is our top rider at Hawthorne. I'm sure he had the choice of multiple horses in this race. So he goes over to this horse, and it's not like he has a history with this horse either. If Mojica's still saying, hey, I want to stick with this horse because it's the best horse in the race, that's something that I'm going to stick with too at that price.
No, and I might have to, because I had this horse as sort of on the second line, but I might move this one up because I think it was everything you were talking about. And just looking at the breeding, I thought there was enough turf breeding on both sides to where, you could ignore that earlier race. That was a long time ago. It was a different time. Now I think this horse maybe knows its form a little better. Is again, this is another one where I think the level is a good fit for this horse, to where this horse can he can get on the win end. Where
and here's one other note for you. That's just kind of an odd but an interesting note. So Eduardo Rodriguez was at Fairgrounds throughout the course of the winter. If he had intentions of wanting to run this horse on the turf at Fairgrounds, but if you remember, Fairgrounds, because they had their turf course issues and it was only 8 starters on the turf, they also limited it to only stakes, only allowance races, and paid an allowance. So for him to try to get into a race like that, he would have had to run over his head to a spot where he didn't necessarily figure, or be stuck on the alsos trying to get in. So there's so many different issues where he's probably been waiting to try to get to the turf, and this is a spot where he figures that he can get into the mix. Had that decent race against Active Fool, and that was probably the reason he stayed on dirt for a little bit, but now that intention gets over to the grass.
You know, I think you've convinced me to move this one up, you know. So in a race where, again, I was with you, I didn't love the other horses, that I didn't love anyone on top. So we'll go to yours next, because I have this horse on top, Modifier. What'd you think about, like, this is just a horse that just seems to fit, ran well back at this level. But what'd you like about this one? I'll let you go first.
He fits on the turf for sure. I mean, this is a horse that the last two numbers, both of those figures are going to put the horse right there. Javier Tavares, the one thing I love about Javier Tavares, he's the one rider that is not afraid to make a move along the inside. Nice. A lot of guys so often are just going to say, okay, I'm just going to take the overland route, cost them a little bit of ground. Tavares, time and again, will just wait on the rail, bide his time, try to get through, and it's paid off for him with numerous wins over the course of the last couple of racing days. But this is a horse that I just think has that ability to kind of settle back, save that ground. The break's not going to be too important, just has to get out of the gate and find that position. But I could see him with the one that gets the ground-saving trip the whole way around and comes running at him in the lane.
I do love a Gio Ponte. If you all the way back on the wall back there is a big Gio Ponte picture. I love a good Gio Ponte. Yeah, and I was thinking sort of the same thing. And again, some of these horses that bounce from surface to surface, their form gets muddied up a little bit. Yeah. And it's almost like if you just erased everything else, what would you think of this horse if they only had these four? And this horse was then sort of dropping back to a level with these nice solid turfs, and you don't see this funny looking 2 here with the loss by 39.
And that's where your price
throws people off.
People look at that exactly like, oh my gosh, this horse is so inconsistent. They got beat 40, and it was on the dirt.
It was on the dirt. Yeah, so we'll see. And then so I had the 8 in second. I just wanted to get your take, because this horse this is a horse you generally don't like. Not you, but most people, because the horse wins at 42-1, comes from off the pace. And now you're getting the horse at 6 and they're single digits. And generally you're like, well, I should have caught it last time. For me, I just wondered if maybe this horse, because it was only the third race on the turf, second win in a row on the turf, and has those dirt races sprinkled in, maybe this horse is just doing what he wants to do, and then they just didn't realize it, and that's why the odds were so bad last time. I don't know. What's your take, though?
Well, and I think you're onto something there too, because like I mentioned, Steve Manley, he's another one of those guys that's stabled down at Fairmount Park for FanDuel Racing. So it's not like he's stabled at Hawthorne and just has all these turf opportunities because they don't have a turf course. But you look last year, he wanted to get on the grass. Okay, he went over to Horseshoe Indianapolis and ran on the grass. Then he was able to run at Hawthorne in the fall. And then you look early in the year, well, we weren't on the turf early in the year, and then finally gets that opportunity to get on the grass, and look what happens. This is a horse that pops at a huge price. I would put the horse right in the mix. You run back to that last race, it's probably a winning race. So it's not like you can dismiss the horse by any means. You're definitely not getting that same price, but I think you are probably going to get, because the horse won at 42-1 and people will use that handicapping logic, you're probably going to get somewhere between 6 and 8-1 on the horse for sure.
No, I agree, and I kind of like this one, and that was my thinking, and I'm glad. I wanted to confirm it with you before and the 2 for 2 at Hawthorne, I like you said, wins the last 2. And again, if you took out all the rest of this stuff and you see a horse that ran 2 in a row with a nice buyer of 73, you'd be like, oh, this horse should be one of the favorites potentially. Well,
but it's the meet's leading rider in the saddle. Centeno's won more races than anybody else, so you're keeping the rider who won last time. But the fact that they got him last time was the thing too. I mean, Centeno said, I'm going to jump on this horse at 42-1. When you're the meets leading rider, you usually have opportunities to pick horses and races also.
Yeah. Anybody else you want to talk about here, or should we move on to the next one?
If you're playing underneath, just scroll to the 5 horse. Just one thing that you definitely have to point out in Gate Crew, look at all the runner-up efforts on the turf. It's a massive amount of times that this horse runs second. If you're playing, play the horse underneath. If the horse beats you, it beats you. But for that reason and that reason alone is the reason I couldn't use Gate Crew in this spot. But if you want to play gimmicks, the horse always seems to come running at him late in the lane. It just comes up a little bit too short.
Yeah, hey, we know Howard looked like he was in the chat there. This could be one of the Howard specials of playing a horse in the underneath spots, and it looks like it's a wide open field enough to where I think you can get some prices on top. So this would be as good a race as any to sort of go with that method if you really want to catch a nice paying trifecta. All right, let's move to the 7th. I'll bring up our picks. We have Maiden special weight, 38,000, going 5 furlongs. We have a field of 8, couple Larry Ravellis, 8-5. I was wondering who was going to be the favorite. I'm glad the odds came up while we were on here because I wanted to hear sort of the reasoning, but I think I know what it is. We have the 7, Give Me the Candy. You have the 7, Give Me the Candy on top. Why did you make this one the favorite, aside from the fact that it ran pretty well and it has Ravelli, and you have this horse on top? What was the thinking there?
I mean, you're a decent price to OBS purchase who went off at 6-5 in the debut.
Yep.
You know the horse is going to get the backing, and it was the typical Ravelli move. Go out there, show speed, see how far you can carry that speed. And the horse, I thought, ran a decent race. I think they actually probably needed that race too, because if you look, everything kind of leading up to that start until that final work, it was 3/8 of a mile, 3/8, and everything was 3/8, and then finally a half, and you just came up a little bit short in the end.
Yep.
Now you come off that race, you have a half-mile drill. I just think a little bit more fitness. Ravelli won a race with a first-timer today that was a $7,000 purchase and won a maiden allowance on the front end. So this is a horse, and also we know one of the owners there, Frank Mastari, who's the guy who's a contest player. You know Frank's money is going to be on the horse too. So it's one of the things where Ravelli always takes action. They're going to get a lot of back. And I thought the horse ran pretty well in its debut, and I think it probably runs really well in this spot also.
Yeah, and it did lose to a Brad Cox horse too, so
Right.
you figure that one was pretty. I did have a funny stat that I wanted to run. So Ravelli 0 for 12 on the win end, 6 for 12 in the money. Second time, this is a weird one. Second time starters in maiden special weight dirt sprints at Hawthorne. So if
How
you're
about
trying
that?
to beat a favorite, there you go. That's the clincher right there. If you want to take a favorite down, but no, that's we always like to dig those up just in case. But
I want to hear what you got to say about the 6 here.
Oh, so, well, it's funny because 12-1, I never, especially with the maidens, and especially because I don't know all the connections as well. So I never really know. So my idea on the 6 is very silly, potentially. Sire side, 18% wins, 2-year-old first-time starters. So at least there's a little bit of something there. 11% dirt sprints. On the dam side, not as much, 2 for 3 in the top 2 with first-time starters, so not as much of a depth there. 4 for 10, 7 for 10 on the money, dirt sprints. But the thing I really liked was, how do you pronounce this last name here?
Essen Price.
Essen Price. Okay.
Yep.
Essen Price who is the trainer, the breeder, and the owner. But if you look at Essen Price with this owner, with Centennial, 3 for 3 wins on the dirt at Hawthorne. That's it. I was like, you know what? Maybe the fact that this horse, he has a great jockey on, owned by Shelley, trained by Edward, bred by, is it Shelley? Am I pronouncing that name? Okay. I just thought, what the hell? This horse might be a price. Maybe there's a lot of factors that are working into it. I'm going to take a shot and see if I can catch a price horse here and beat the 2 Ravellis.
All right, I'm going to give you some great inside information to help you feel even a little bit better about your selection.
I like that.
All right, so when we do entries, especially for races like this, because we don't have a ton of Illinois-bred horses, especially for 2-year-olds, when we have an Illinois-bred 2-year-old maiden allowance, we'll usually put an open 2-year-old maiden allowance on the same day of entries, just in case the Illinois-bred race doesn't fill, and these horsemen want the opportunity to, if from one race to the other, to go ahead and run. So the Illinois-bred race only had 4 in it. Okay. The open race ended up having 6 in it. Well, some of these horsemen decided, I'm going to if over and do it with the chance because I want to run this racehorse. And some decided, I don't feel that I can compete against the open horses. Well, Eddie Essen Price ifed over immediately. So he entered in the Illinois bred race, but said, if that race doesn't go, I want to be in the open, which is this race here.
Yep.
At the same time, he's stabled down at Fairmount Park. Well, Fairmount Park tomorrow is entering for an Illinois bred 2-year-old race. Well, he chooses this spot instead, where the purse is $14,000 more than what it is down there. And being an Illinois bred racehorse, if he runs in the money, he's going to get another 40% on top of it. So he's running it. You talk about trainer intent. The intent is here. He's thinking that if he can go out, run well, if he wins this race, they're making almost $40,000 for the racehorse compared to what they would down at FanDuel, which would be about $15,000. So you take trainer intent into account, and you have to with something like this. You have all the stats. Again, it's a leading rider riding for a guy that isn't as well known at Hawthorne. You're going to get every bit of that 12-1, Pete, but it would not shock me at all if this horse ran well.
Oh, I love to hear that because, yeah, I figured this again, when you have first time starters or even a second time starter, you just never know. So I figure
Right.
if I can catch a price, and again, it's not like I wouldn't use the 7 or most likely the 5. You
Yep.
want to give a quick thing on Neon Dion, the other Ravelli horse here?
I mean, Mojica's always Ravelli's go-to guy when he's at Hawthorne. So he puts him on this one, and I'm sure it's because Amy rode the other horse first time out.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and we've seen this quite a bit actually out of Ravelli lately, he's going to enter 2 in there, and then only 1 is going to run. So look to see if one of these horses scratches, and then you
Okay.
kind of give a look to the other. I think Gimme the Candy stays in only for the fact that this is a horse that's run already, and the timing kind of lays out for the horse to run back. Neon Dion, I do have in the mix, but it wouldn't shock me actually if that was a horse that possibly even scratched.
Okay. Did you want to say anything about the 2? You have the 2 Excitable Boy, another
Um,
first time starter for
You know what?
Robertson.
I like the breeding. I tend to wonder if eventually that horse is going to want to go a little bit longer, though. So I'll be curious to see kind of how things unfold. But Hugh Robertson picks the spots, and he kind of picks and chooses and waits. So anytime that he's in a race, especially with a younger horse, they're usually well positioned and usually well intended too. Hugh Robertson's very good with 2-year-olds. So that's one other thing too. And he doesn't run a ton of them. But when he does, those horses usually run very well. And you see it from the stat there at the bottom of the screen. But I'll tell you, when those horses come out, you can expect a pretty good effort out of Hugh Robertson, the 2-year-old as well.
Yeah, I thought this one was definitely he didn't have a ton of success, made in special weight dirt sprints at Hawthorne, another little stat, but
Yep.
hits the board. Is always seems to be hitting the
Yep.
board. So again, if you can get a price underneath, that's great. So let's move to the last one. We'll try and wrap this up for everyone here. Made in special weight, race 8, purse 38,000. We're going 5.5 on the turf. We have a field of 10. The favorite is the 7 Viola, and you are going with the 5 horse
Yep.
Ruth of Judah.
Yep.
Why don't you? I'll scroll to that while you tell us. Second time starter. What do you like about this one?
Well, here's the interesting thing. These races are available to be run at Horseshoe Indianapolis, and Louis Roussel's choosing to come over to Hawthorne instead to run this horse. He sent the horse over to Hawthorne back at the end of July, and that's when they had their little bit of a break at Horseshoe Indianapolis. Wanted to run on the turf. Race came off the turf. He stayed in. The horse had all sorts of issues prior to the start of that race. Didn't want to load, really battled back and forth, and then just kind of ran okay. But they're coming back to Hawthorne. They're going to run again. Louis had some success throughout the course of this meet. Sometimes it's a little bit harder at Horseshoe Indianapolis when they run an open maiden race because they run a lot of Indiana bred races and they have a really strong Indiana bred program. So when there's the concern that you may not be able to get in that race and you might be in also, it's one of those things where you're looking here, you know, you can get in the race. They draw well. You get the bug rider, but I think Ruth of Judah is going to be overlooked a little bit because you have that Ravelli horse there, and it's a Ravelli horse that's a huge purchase price also. And this is a horse just having a race under its belt, and the turf was definitely the intent. And I think this is a horse that could get a very solid trip.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I wasn't sure what to do with this one. I wound up tossing it, but it's always I hate those horses that just run sort of poorly and there's not really an excuse and you go, was that just a first time starter kind of thing and they're going to fire that second one out. So I have Viola on top. This was one again, like you were just talking about with Ravelli, Mojica, $635,000 purchase. You look at stuff like that. Grade Stakes, Bold Union was a graded stakes winning dam. Violence has been pretty hot.
Yeah.
It's a weird one for someone who's me, who doesn't look at Hawthorne as much. You look at this and go, what the hell is this horse doing here in this race at 635? Do you want to give a little bit more background on this one?
This is home for Larry Ravelli.
Yeah, is it just?
And he's got some very good owners. I mean, but you're right though, because everybody's like, oh, the horse should come from Keeneland. The horse should come from whatever, Kentucky, New York, California. It's kind of the thing. And you do have some horse. I mean, Two Phils was trained in a Hawthorne all the way up to the Kentucky Derby. It's the home base for Larry, and then he kind of goes from there. But he's got those owners, Vince Foglia, which is Patricia's hope, and then Carolyn Wilson are two of his top owners, and they're not afraid to spend money. But you see Larry popping up. He's had horses in the Breeders' Cup. He's had horses in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, stuff like that. But they start somewhere. And the thing is, Hawthorne's a very good track to train on and then get ready and have those opportunities. So I expect they go from here, run this race. And, of course, if things go very well, then you're probably looking maybe even something like Keeneland's track like that because you are Kentucky bred. but this is something where they're going to get the first start out under their belt and then see what they have. And I think that's the reason why that they're here for that first time.
Do you imagine you'll even get that 7-2, or you think this one will take a bunch of more money?
It wouldn't surprise me if it takes more money. I mean, the horse that you have second in there is the only horse that kind of maybe evens it out a little bit, because that horse has run okay over the course of those 2 starts. Again, it's Scott Becker who does pretty well over the Hawthorne Strip. It's a horse that ran okay on the turf in that last out, and that just had all sorts of traffic trouble really in there and finishing 4th. That may be the only reason that you maybe get a decent price. I don't know if it's going to be 7-2. It may end up being even a little bit shorter.
Yeah, it did. I won't show the replay, but this poor 3 had the horse, I think, was pulling up basically and just sort of did it right in this horse's face and had no shot, but then still had the guts to sort of run on at the end, which is why I was like, especially underneath, I wouldn't mind this horse at all. Last one we'll touch on, Angel Express. It's just sort of an obvious one. What are your thoughts on this one? I had this one in 3rd. You have in 2nd. Looks like a little bit of speed here too.
Well, and speed actually has been pretty decent on the Hawthorne turf course. Once again, it's something when the turf course has a little bit of moisture in it, then it usually kind of evens out. When that turf course gets hard, it's very fast. If you go back and if you have a chance, take a look at the last race today on the turf. We had a horse set the course record. A horse by the name of Tightrope was the name. But the horse went 5.5 furlongs in a minute. I mean, it just absolutely flying on the front end. Ended up winning by 10 lengths and made the lead. That. Yeah, our stakes winner today, Katie Milady, was another one that won on the front end. So Angel Express is a horse that should be able to get out there, should be able to show speed. Manny Esquivel is a guy who basically has spent the entire summer at Horseshoe Indianapolis, but he pops up at Hawthorne on Sundays just to get a few extra mounts and pick up a little extra money. He rode this horse last time out, rode the horse very well actually on the main track, turned back in distance, going over to the turf. This horse will be winging it, and this is a horse that could get a very good trip, and it might have a course that plays to its favor.
That would be nice at a price too. And Esquivel, as you could see here, 15 out of 23 in the money. So when it comes, he's coming to win races. He's just not popping over here for fun. So, all right, well, we'll get to our pick 4 tickets.
Yeah.
And like Jim was saying before, you'll see here in a second. So Jim's ticket, $32. He went all in the first leg with 1-3, with 7, with 3, 5, 7, 9. Why don't you talk to us about how you structured this one?
Try to beat Sonny is not so funny there at race number 5. If you can do that, anybody else is going to provide a price for you. And like I said, it just took a couple of prices on yesterday's late pick 4 and it returned $10,000. So I'm not saying this is a $10,000 ticket, but I'm also saying in race number 5, anybody legitimately can win. There's not going to be any massive prices in there, but there's going to be a whole lot of horses from say 5-1 to 12-1. Get a couple of those and beat the favorite. I think you're in good shape. The second leg, like I said, the big question mark is Millard's Smile. We know what we have in Modifier. It's a horse that you like, a horse that I have in the mix, and a pretty consistent racehorse on the turf. Millard's Smile outclasses the field, I think, by quite a bit. It's just going to be how the horse takes to the turf, but that's the question mark and the reason you'll get a price. It's the Ravelli the second timer, for me in the 7th. The horse that has the race under its belt, shows speed, has the longer work since that last start, and I think just might have the edge over the first timers. Then 4 deep with the 4 logical horses that you and I have on the ticket in the end, and get to that leg. I'm going to be feeling pretty comfortable there because I think one of those 4 will win the finale.
No, I'm with you on that one. I think, we're not too far off in that. Yeah, unfortunately, there's ways we could both. I'm looking at it. There's ways we could both win, which I always enjoy. That as long as we could do that. So here's my ticket, $40.50. I didn't get as creative or spready. I went a straight 3-3-3-3, 2-4-7 in the first leg with 1-6-8, with 5-6-7, with 3-7-9, and I think simply for me it was. Again, I thought that first race was pretty wide open.
Yep.
In the third leg, if you can beat the Ravelli horse, that's where I think you could catch it. So like you said, and Howard and I talk about this on the show a lot, where you don't need 20-1 shots to have a balloon. You just don't want multiple, 6-5s. And this sequence in general just doesn't allow for that. There's not really, I don't think there's going to be a favorite that's low. I mean, you're the odds maker.
Probably, that Ravelli horse is probably
the only one, and it's still a first time. It's still it's still not a first time, but it's still second race.
It's 2-year-olds, and it's not like anybody has
anything can happen. So, yes, yeah. So that was my thinking: is hey, I'll go a little bit deeper. Plus, I like to hear what Jim has to say about my horses first, but I do have that one horse, Jack Spratt. If we could win that race, if we can get double digits, then I'm trying to blow up the pick 4 a little bit. So, well, I love doing the Hawthorne. I don't get to do this with you very often. It's awesome. Do you have anything specific before we go you want to talk about, or you want to plug anything you want to say before we sign off?
Here's just the cool thing. Looking back to the Arlington Million, and you guys talk about the Arlington Million, and reading through the comments and seeing some of the names, people talking about the Tin Man, people talking about some of the other horses. I worked for Arlington Millions at Arlington. So 1993 was Star of Cozine, a really solid racehorse. 1994 was Paradise Creek. We were all so hopeful that year. If you remember, it was like the big match, Paradise Creek and Laura. Were they going to match up? Were they going to battle? And Laura ended up going to the Baruch, Paradise Creek to the Million. But we were so hopeful, and it was so close that you were going to have like that big matchup there between those two racehorses. And then it was a Wad. And then it was Mekki, two horses that kind of come from out of it. But I just remember talking to David Donk in 1995, and he's like, I don't know if I can win this race with a Wad. And I'm like, I think you can. And then all of a sudden the horse comes charging at him late and wins. And then a little bit later on, I worked for a little bit with Midwest Thoroughbreds, and I got to know the Pizza Man very well. And to see him just win the Arlington Million, it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, and just kind of have the local horse and all the local connections, the Illinois bred. So there's a lot of great memories for the Million. So I can't say that I don't dislike the fact that the race is happening. I just dislike the fact that it's not happening at Arlington, because it truly was. They called it the International Festival of Racing, and it was. I worked the press box that you had, and it wasn't a huge press box, but you had 50, 60 members of the media that were there, and there were international media, local media, and that. It was a really cool atmosphere. It was a great way for me to get involved in the game. So for that reason, I'm happy the Million goes on. Just kind of sad that it's not happening where it belongs.
There you go. Howard popping in. A Wad was one of his favorite. The Pizza Man. I love pizza in general, so I always loved it. Did Main Sequence win the Arlington? Am I remembering that? Or I can't remember, but that I always like this day. I always like this day just because I love turf racing, and I love the fact that you generally would get these nice sequences with big fields, and you always got that. And to me, it was just better than the short field dirt races. And you could get horses from off the pace, like you talked about, which I love to my own detriment. But I just love this day, and I'm glad. And again, because I don't have that personal connection to Arlington, I'm just glad it still exists in some form or fashion. And again, we're not getting the greatest Arlington Million in terms of, like we said, nobody's winning the Eclipse out of that race. Right. But it's a fun betting race. I feel like it could be a blanket finish. I feel like they all could just be coming at the end. So hopefully it's at least a fun day and a fun sequence. And if nothing else, we can cash some tickets out of it.
Hey, we're both sitting on a 10-to-1 shot in there. So hopefully it is a fun day for you and
me and you. I mean, I think when you and I are in sync, I think we do okay. Anything else you want to plug, or you're all good for now?
You know what? Just good luck to everybody. A reminder, we always have those contests at Hawthorne Racecourse. Check the website, hawthorneracecourse.com. Click on the contest page. So many NHC qualifiers that happen. The big one always Thanksgiving weekend. So just make sure you check that out. And they can find me on Twitter at Hawthorne Jim if they have any questions as well.
Sounds awesome. And I guess we will say that don't forget, for everyone listening still, tomorrow's Saratoga Today is a taped version. So if you try and go on at 10:30, it won't be anything live tomorrow. So look for the taped version tomorrow. We'll be back with the live versions on Saturday and Sunday like normal. Other than that, like we like to say on this, everyone please crush your bets. For myself, for Jim Miller from Hawthorne, for Paul Halloran, who was with us earlier, thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. I'll see you guys all in 2 weeks because I'm going to California on Saturday. I'll catch you guys in a couple of weeks. Thanks a lot, Jim. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Pete.
Talk to you later.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.